Well, you're no spring chicken. That was the very first thing my neighbor told me when I told her I was pregnant. Can you believe it? Maybe she just didn't believe me, but I don't hold it against her. She has been a tad cranky ever since she found a scorpion in her girdle drawer. Maybe she just couldn't understand how much of a miracle this was for me. Zachariah and I, we've been trying our whole lives to have a child of our own. But by the time my hair turned gray and Zachariah's turned loose, we'd just given up hope. But nothing is impossible with God. And he seemed to delight in making life in impossibly barren places. And as if that's not enough, the angel who gave us this unbelievable news had more to say. This child, our son, would be used by God to prepare the people for the coming of the Messiah. When I was about 6 months pregnant, my cousin Mary came for a visit. No sooner had she said hello than my unborn child flipped and jumped inside of me. Right then, God opened my eyes to clearly see that this young girl standing in front of me was also a child, and he would be called Wonderful Counselor, Almighty God, Everlasting Father, and Prince of Peace. 9 months later, I got the news from Bethlehem, and I looked over at Zachariah holding our very own miracle child. And I had a God moment, that moment when you realize God had different plans. He loved to make life in possibly barren places. He hadn't forgotten about us, and he would never leave us again.
If I had known then what I know now, there'd have been room in my inn. I would have given my own bed for them, but I couldn't have known. It was packed. I'd never seen Bethlehem so full of people. The government made everyone in the world go back to their hometowns to register. They gotta make their money, right? And since no one wants to stay with their in-laws, I was booked solid. It was about dinner time when all spaces had filled up. I can still remember it clearly. It was 2 hours after dinner when they showed up. Talk about desperate. He looked scared and exhausted, and she was about to burst. As they were walking up, I was thinking what I was going to say to them. Oh, I'm sorry, we don't have any room here. But then they got there, and they stood for a while. He was looking down, trying to gather his thoughts, and she winced ever so slightly in pain. Then he looked up and said, please. That's all he said. Please. Let me tell you a story. I'm 5 years old, and I'm helping my mom set the table. I told her she has too many plates out. She looks at me and tells me, you always make room. You never know who's going to show up. I look at her like, what? But then she says empathetically, you never know who God will send your way, so you always make room. And that's what I did. I made room. It wasn't the best, but it was all we had. So, Mom was right. You always make room, especially when it comes to God.
Amen. Amen.
It started out just like any other night. Well, except for my angel. I haven't seen anything like it since or before. That angel, it came out to us so bright, so beautiful. Now, I know you're thinking, Sam, you went that pastor out for too long. I thought the exact same thing. Except when the angel started talking to us. It said, "Don't be afraid," and shouted right back at him. Too late! And then the angel said, it said bread, milk, butter. Oh wait, that's my grocery list. Sorry. It said, "I have good news of a great joy that shall be for all people. For unto you is born in the city of David this day, which is a Savior, Christ the Lord." Then the other shepherds said, "What are we waiting for? Let's go out to Bethlehem." Okie dokie. So we hightailed out of there and to find that beautiful baby. After that night, I was a different man because God chose me, and in my life, no one ever chose me. And I'll never forget what that angel said. It said, "Good news for all people." That includes you too.
God had been silent for 400 years. We knew because we had listened. In a sense. My job was to listen. People who talk a lot, you don't call them wise, do you? No. We have a whole bunch of other names for them, and trust me, wise is not one. In my position, I look for signs everywhere. We watched the stars. We watched them and tried to figure out what they were trying to tell us. I read of a star that announced a new king. Then, out of nowhere, a star appeared. The star was different. It was like a beacon in the night. After watching for a while, I felt that this was the star the Jews had been looking for. The star foretold by their ancient scripture. The star of the Messiah. So I followed it. There were a few of us, and yes, we actually followed a star. It was so bizarre. It led us, it moved, and we followed. Eventually, it led us to Jerusalem, and that's where we met Herod. See, he claimed that he also wanted to worship the Messiah. So he demanded that once we found the newborn, that we would go and tell him. But we were warned in a dream not to trust this man. After 2 years of our journey, we finally ended up in Judea, with the star hovering over a small cottage. Our journey ended not at a palace fit for a king, but the home of a peasant. Our journey ended not at a palace, but a small cottage. This was it. We gathered our thoughts and our gifts and did what we could to contain our emotions. When we went in there, we found a king. A king who can command the movement of stars, yet chose to live with his people. God was done being silent. He spoke, and his word became flesh to dwell among his people. We bowed down that night. Yes, we bowed down to the baby. We laid our gifts at his feet. We had to. 400 years of silence broken by the cries of a new king. Yes, he spoke. And we worshipped.
It was the longest, most difficult, scariest, exciting, confusing, most wonderful day of my life. When God allows you to be a father, there's no words. But when God allows you to be the stepfather of his son, now that's overwhelming. He was born a happy, healthy baby boy. Born like just about any other baby boy. But when I tell you, now I understand what labor is. I've worked every day, hard, since I was 12. And never in my life have I worked as hard as Mary did that night. Mary, she's amazing. Not just through the birth, but through everything. Through the months of people talking behind our backs, the week-long journey to Bethlehem. And then I watched her turn a feeding trough into a cradle. And it didn't even faze her. She's amazing. Through it all, she never asked why. Even when she didn't even understand what was going on. All she knew was God was in control. So she did as he said, and she was open to his will. Now I understand why he chose her. But thinking, what I don't understand is why he chose me.
Awesome.
For as long as I can remember, we've always been waiting for the Messiah to come for us. It's just always been that way. I always knew he would come, but, well, let's be honest, I'm not from Jerusalem or any place special. I'm just a girl, a nobody from Nazareth. And everyone knows nothing good ever comes out of Nazareth. Never has. I thought for sure the angel had come to the wrong house with his announcement. But if this is what the Lord wanted, who was I to tell him that he was wrong? And Joseph, God bless that man. He could have joined in with everyone else. Sent me away, even had me killed. But he never broke his promise to marry me. So when he had to go to Bethlehem for the census, I was honored to ride by his side. even with heartburn, loaded pinkles, and 9 months of pregnancy behind me. You know those pregnant women who do things to reduce their labor, like taking frequent walks or eating spicy foods? What they should do is go on a bumpy 70-mile trip to Bethlehem. Because not long after we arrived, I had never done this myself, but I could tell it was time. With each wave of pain, I tried to forget the fact that I'd be having this baby without my family to help me, without the familiarity of home. When Jesus was finally born, I forgot all that, though. I wrapped him in cloth and made the most comfortable bed I could with all we had, an animal's feeding trough. Joseph said I should have been resting then, but I just couldn't stop staring at him. There he was, the one the angel told me about. My heart was so full, but none of my words were big enough to express it. I knew then, as I looked down at my son, my Redeemer, that he would be the one who changed everything. Because he had already changed